Hello once again to our viewers at home and abroad for another episode of the AWS Data and AI YouTube series. And today we have a very special episode where we talk about executive insights and what executives, far and wide in different organizations are thinking about in this age of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I'm joined with our two esteemed colleagues today from Amazon Web Services and Amazon. Would you like to introduce yourself first?
Absolutely, yeah. My name is Keith Inch. I'm excited to be here. The London EBC site lead, where we host all of our customers here in EMEA.
Ahmed Raafat, been with AWS for 7 years. I lead the machine learning specialist solution architect for AWS and UK and Ireland.
And actually, it's just really important to think about from a technical perspective, what is it that executives are thinking about, and also like the practicalities of bringing people together. Obviously, the Executive Briefing Center that we have at Amazon Web Services is been running for quite some time now, but it's very unique in its proposition to bring in executives far and wide to actually have the right type of conversations. And I think I kind of want to start off there around that conversation that executives are having. Like, what would be the real reasons why executives are coming to London? Like, some of them have to fly in from different parts of the world to come to London and have that discussion. Why wouldn't they want to have it in their boardroom? I mean, Keith, what do you think is the real reasons why executives are coming to us?
Absolutely, and that's a great question. They are so busy with their day-to-day life, running a whole company, but they want to take a time and pause and then speak with us as kind of that strategic advisor to really help them with their business challenges. So they take a pause from work, fly across the globe many times with their peers to meet with us and to better understand how can we empower them to actually overcome those challenges.
What's interesting right now is that when you think about executives, you think about people who are in the boardroom, that brings up 20 years ago. If you think about, those high rises, if you go to Canary Wharf in London, like the viewers have ever been, you go right to the top, that's where the executives are. But you could argue right now in the age of technology that the people who actually have the most power are the people who do the work, right? You can't expect an executive to do all of the coding. But I'm interested to get your thoughts, Ahmed. It's like, when you have a conversation with executives, do they feel a bit threatened by the age of AI? Like, do they feel that other people can do their job better? Do they even know the pulse of what technology is? If you think about an executive and you were to think about who they are, you can imagine someone who is a little bit older than maybe your developers out there. So, I mean, what are you seeing right now which is worrying, executives in this age of AI?
It's a long spectrum across the executive. There is some of them in FUD and some of them in FOMO and some of them like fear of the technology. They still try to be more in control and just don't want to just quickly run to that. And there is others that they just have this fear of missing the opportunity, so they want to jump so very fast. And I think what we try to do during this day of the Executive Briefing Center is try to bring them on the middle and see how actually AI can help them with their business challenges and work backward from that to solve those problems. So this is what we are trying to handle. Some of them, as you mentioned, have this not real understanding about what's happening on the AI era, and this is why they come to the space, try to be a little bit disconnected from their daily work, to think about it more, and be open in discussion. And you maybe think sometimes they don't feel comfortable to talk to their, I would say, peers in the organization. Depends on the culture, and Executive Briefing Center give them this a chance to speak with each other and actually brainstorm, hearing different experience from different customers.
And it's quite interesting. Obviously, it's one thing to bring, executives together and actually have a discussion. But it's another to then actually, how does the messaging that happens at the executive level actually breach the people who actually do the work, right? I mean, it's all well and good that you've got, Amazon, we've got leadership principles. We say this is what we want to do as leaders. But then how do you then actually then take that into the day-to-day work of the people who actually do that technical work? And I'd be interested to even get your thoughts, Keith, around, when we host executives and we want to have an empowering conversation, have you seen the last, 2 or 3 years, there's been a slight shift in the types of people who attend these briefings? Because I imagine people who come to Amazon Web Services, let's face it, it's a technology company, right? So, there is a part of me, a naivety of me that would say, you've got just your chief technology officer or your chief data officer. Just they're the ones who want to have the briefing, and then they bring in their own teams. But have you seen a slight shift in terms of the types of attendees who come to these briefings? Is there a different spectrum of people? And in terms of seniority as well, is there, the people who still are in that ivory tower, no pun intended, that, come? Or is it a case where they're trying to bring in other people who are arguably a little bit more junior, but they still want to empower them to have that leadership view when they come to these briefings?
No, absolutely. I think in the past, we always saw the CIO and the CTO really driving discussions with our companies to understand how the technologies can be implemented and how they can accelerate. But lately, especially in the last 2-3 years, we're seeing the entire C-suite pretty engaged with our solutions that we can kind of help their problems. The CMO, the COO, the CFO. Nowadays they're pretty much all technology enablers. Now, oftentimes they'll bring in some of their subject matter experts because they've been hearing from them for the last 6-8 months how AI, Amazon is really transforming other industry partners and competitors for them. And so they'll bring them with them to hear more about how our technology can help solve for their business problem. And I think it's important because it's that one opportunity where the CIO and the CMO can actually come to us and we can share with them how they will overcome that challenge versus connecting the dots with what their technology experts have been telling them for months.
Yeah, I can share a recent example. Actually, we just had an ABC, one of our customers, and the key audience there was the procurement team. Yeah, we had someone, the CIO was also there, but mostly the whole discussion was from the procurement team and the head of procurement, and we spent most of the day just drawing down the whole procurement process that sometimes can take them 6 months and see where is actually AI can help. So that was the audience, and as you just mentioned, it's totally different audience, maybe before the era of the AI, if we can say that.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting when you think about some of the key numbers that are coming out from, our partners at Gartner or New Vantage partners. And obviously we run a lot of these surveys ourselves with C-level. But one of the biggest impediments to adopting the new era of artificial intelligence, a lot of the time they cite culture. There's always this construct of data governance. Those who have tuned this channel know a lot about data governance, and certainly that's a technical construct that people try and use brute force to overcome. But a lot of the times, like cultural challenges at organizations is hard to overcome because you have people who have been there for 20, 30 years. For them to adopt to the era of AI is a little bit harder, right? So, are executives quite clear in terms of how they can change culture? I mean, Keith, have you've been in this EBC kind of era, with our previous partners and also with Amazon Web Services now. Have you seen there's still fundamentally a organizational culture change that executives struggle to unlock? Like, how do you find that has changed with technology? Is it still the same answer, or is there still nuts and bolts? There's still a human resources kind of need, like a function that needs to be kind of unpacked to unlock that value?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the traditional companies were doing business as normal, and then I think a good example was when the pandemic hit a couple of years ago. We saw every industry and every company have to kind of embrace technology different, and that fundamentally changed the organization of how companies were structured, and they would come to us to kind of understand how are we doing it. Now, I think that same discussion can be true for AI. We're seeing companies wonder, how do I get out of this traditional mindset I've had for 100 years, let's say as a retailer, and really embrace kind of what you're doing as one of the largest retailers in the world with Amazon.com. So it gives the opportunity for us to kind of share those best practices and give them just some insights, talk them through kind of what are those challenges that they've been facing and what we've done to overcome them.
Yeah, and do you find that quite a lot, Ahmed? It's like when you have an executive interlock, even one-to-one when they come to you in an event, a lot of the time, do they want to find out what is it that we're doing at Amazon AWS? Or sometimes is it just having like a bit of a friend to talk to, someone who understands their challenge? Like, I'm interested to find out, like, how would you kind of see the value of you as an esteemed leader when you talk with executives? Is it about talking about the technology? Is it talking about battle stories, as you said, like, what you've suffered in the past, that type of thing?
Yeah, I think a lot of time we spend with our customer to tell them that avoid certain mistakes that we see maybe other has been gone through, or even the learnings that we learn as an Amazon. And as you mentioned, like, they come to us is not only because we are a technology provider. we as well as a part of the bigger picture of Amazon, we've been using those technologies. We've been using AI for more than 20 years. Like if you talk about robotics, for example, and we have deployed the robot number 1 million in our fulfillment center recently. So they ask about all this stuff. They want to learn as well how we come with those innovations, how we are actually applying AI on it, and how we can empower our people as well, how we train our people internally to do this. So a lot of part of the discussion that we have is also learn from Amazon. We are not saying that Amazon way of doing is the best thing and everyone we have to follow. We share our experience, say this is how we do it. There is a lot of common thing that we see, and they as well learn from that, and we learn from them. And it's one of the, I would say, key usually session that we are providing during the ABC learning from Amazon.
Yeah. And what's quite interesting is that learning from how Amazon has scaled, from 30 years ago to where it is now is quite an amazing story. But at the same time as well, it can only grow that quickly because, Amazon had to operate on what we call a lot of fires. We try and light as many fires as we can here, and then we only stoke the fires when we see that one is burning brighter than the other. And I'd be interested to get your thoughts, Keith. I think, is there some skepticism sometimes when executives come to talk to us around whether or not they can simply just copy paste what Amazon is doing and apply that? One of the things that I talked about just now is about the leadership principles, right? We've got around about 16 or 17 of them. How much is it about learning about what Amazon's doing and then just finding out best practices? And then how much is, when we run these executive briefing centers, how much is it about actually then how do we apply that into their organization? So is it a lot of presentations that we present to them about learning? Or do you find that the best type of briefing is about having more of that type of kind of workshop whiteboarding? What did you find? Yeah.
Well, I think both, and two-part question here. I think initially, sometimes when the customers, before coming in, they see the agenda that we design for them, kind of curate bespoke agenda for them, and they realize, why are we spending this time to travel to hear about what Amazon's doing? The great news is really the feedback and the evaluations at the end are always incredibly positive, because we're not necessarily talking about ourselves, but we're talking about the fundamentals that we've are built off of and how we can use it. And that goes right, segue into your second question, which is, the best kind of discussions that we have in the EBC are discussions, and that rather than presentations. We do a lot of working backwards from the customer problems and offer solutions, but work with them rather than talk to them. And I think that's very important, because I think it allows them to see us more as that strategic partner, that advisor, rather than more of the product seller. Because at the end of the day, we talk to so many customers, we've heard so many insights, really a lot of best practices that they might be able to take back for their own challenges that they're facing in their business.
And is that also true? I mean, in terms of when you have one entire day where you can engage with the board, do you find a lot of the time they are open just to listening to us present to them on the latest and greatest? Do you think actually a lot of the time they just want to know a little bit about what is it that they do internally as well? And I guess the question is, sometimes it's a struggle for organizations to even come together and find a day to actually work together. Do you even think that executives in different parts of the organization talk to each other that much? I mean, is that something that you see a lot? It's you find out actually, hey, I didn't know that you even sit in this function. Yeah. What's your thoughts?
So back to the example that we just mentioned about the procurement, when the head of procurement was explaining the process in their organizations, the CIO, for example, is like, oh, I didn't know that we were doing that. And even within the same team, they don't know that the other is doing this. So it's a great opportunity for them to share an idea and challenge each other on that. And one of the other things that also we love to do this session, that we ask them to do something or build something during the day. And that's what's actually the AI now help people to do things faster. So things like maybe we can ask them to open tools like we call Party Rock, and they start to brainstorm on it, you're talking to each other, building a quick app on it, of the people fun of, building something no code, low code, maybe they can using things like we call Kiro or whatever. So the idea that they can have this learn from Amazon, and also share some customer stories, but also they can start to build something and play with the tool during the day. And that's remove a little bit of the fear of those tools. When they touch base and they feel that they empowered, even as an executive level, to do this, they back to their team later and say, oh, by the way, I run that, it worked fine, I can do it. If I can do it as an executive, why we don't your team can do it? And that's actually make the day more engaging.
And it's quite interesting. You talked before about like fear of missing out, and obviously, if we can talk with an executive and we can overcome that fear of missing out and actually show them this is what you could do, it's always great. But there's also a part of me that also says that sometimes there are failures, right? So when we talk with executives, sometimes the key messaging only reaches one part of that executive, and I'd be interested to find out when you engage with executives, how important is to make sure that you find a sponsor that is both business and technology? Let's say that you've got a chief information officer and also like the product officer. How much do we need to prepare them both, like this is what we're doing? Or actually, sometimes is it about having that chaos? Sometimes if they don't talk to each other in that day, it's okay as well. But the fact is that you want to expose some of the hard truths. Like, Keith, have you had any battle stories around like things that didn't quite look good at the end of the day, but actually it was all justified at the end because actually you need to have that conflict?
Yeah, no, definitely, 100%. There has been quite a few challenging discussions, I would say. We can prepare as much in advance as possible. Often we're working with the CIO and the CTO, and they might give us just one side of the puzzle. And then when it comes to the hosting the briefing, we have the CEO come in, and maybe the priorities aren't aligned. Maybe it's not as technically focused as they want. I think the great thing is we're really in a safe space in the Executive Briefing Center with our own leaders and their leadership to really kind of pivot and adapt to whatever their needs are and the concerns are. So many times we will start out the day thinking that this is the conversation we're going to have, and by the end of it, it's a whole different package. But that's okay too, because at the end of the day, we're really just trying to find out how can we help them achieve that goal, even if it's not the same goal we sought after.
Yeah, and one of the things which is quite interesting is, in my past experience working in large organizations, when you've got leaders who don't talk to each other, it always becomes kind of like a ticketing system, like a very transactional relationship where the business would want something and then technology need to follow. And I think that's definitely been exacerbated a lot with machine learning and artificial intelligence. Right? We say that artificial intelligence, everyone can build it, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, to actually build something that lasts the test of time requires a bit of people skills. Yeah. And that a lot of those people skills probably lie in the technology team. So I'd be interested, Ahmed, like when executives are thinking about, I want to do the latest and greatest in artificial intelligence, but then I actually need to make that last. Like, do you think executives actually care that things need to last, or do you think that they just care that something gets done and then it excites? Like, how much have you seen a shift between people wanting to do something that lasts versus I just want to say that I've done it? Like, I mean, this is something which we always hear a lot about, this kind of proof of concept to production. And we know that the conversion rate from proof of concept to production are quite low. But actually, is that a bad thing? I'd be interested to get your thoughts.
So it depends. Like, it depends on the stage where they are. So ideation, getting people excited is not bad at all, right? And even fail fast. It's one of the things on the culture that we do in Amazon as well. So it's not a bad thing that you try different stuff, you fail with this. This will help you to the next idea, help you to move with the next thing that you can put in production. So we encourage people to come with those ideas. We brainstorm with them. We even put many of those ideas during the day, but then we help them and think this is maybe as well differentiate us as an Amazon, right? We're not just like selling technology, right? We are working with them as a partner. So you'll find during this EBCs and those meetings that we actually challenge them on some of those ideas, because some of the executive, as maybe you mentioned, they come thinking of the AI as a magic wand, they're going to be solve everything, and say like, okay, we'll do that. And then you find on the other side, the CIOs or the CTOs or the security team say, no, we cannot just take this as easy. We have things, we have to put it in the right way, we have to secure it, we have to take it to production. And that's what we are trying to get in and to help them to choose the right use case based on their business requirement and have the visibility to deploy it in production. And that's where the tools, and don't want to go on much tools today to talk about the services, but this is where the AWS services and the tool help them to productionize those generative AI solutions. And instead of just have them as a nice idea sit on the shelf, how they can quickly take it to productions. And we was talking about many customers about that. So we have one of our customer, for example, had an idea about agentic AI, train line. So I think most of the people in the UK has been using that. They had an ABC 6 or 7 months back, and within 5 months, they're able to deploy an agentic AI solution to production, integrating with their app. And this is where, as I mentioned, like you can brainstorm so many ideas, but at certain stages, important to have some of those to be deployed, because this will trigger the flywheel of like, you think big, you try multiple stuff, but take one thing, deploy it, get people excited, then you have this flywheel that will encourage people to move you to the next idea and help them to accelerate. This is where I think it worked very well, like encourage people to think, but also take some things to production will help people to get more excited.
Yeah, and actually that's a really good point, is like, now that we're talking about what's the latest and greatest agentic AI, and actually building out AI solutions that interact with different parts of services that customers would have, is something that is helping to automate a lot of what people are doing. But I think when I think about automation, I think about optimization, it comes back to the age-old kind of question organizations have, which is, how do I become more productive and how can I do more with less, right? And I guess I'm interested, Keith, like, is that still a predominant topic that executives want to come to us at AWS and say, I only have this amount of money that I can spend. I want to do more with that amount of money, and I need to find ways in which technology can replace people. Is that still an ongoing conversation? And maybe that's an unhappy truth, which is that we are seeing organizations trying to replace people who are in the loop completely. But is that a reality that you're hearing actually when we actually have them in that room?
It's a conversation, and we're seeing it in the news. I think the truth is innovation's moving so fast that industries are having to change just as quickly. And with that, how companies are set up and organized, there's 5-6 more C-suite titles than we had 20, 30 years ago. And they're implementing much quicker. They're making decisions faster to stay more competitive in the global market. I don't necessarily would say that they are looking to necessarily downsize. I think they're looking to us to get ideas in how they can move faster, be more agile, be more strategic, be more competitive. And by, talking with us about some of the options and solutions we have available, it really piques their interest and gets them thinking bigger. And so certainly they want to stay just as competitive now as they did more than ever. But they are looking to see how they can impact greater, I think is more the conversation that they're having, how they can reach more people, how they can diversify their portfolio of products or services, how they can understand their customer better. That's a conversation coming up a lot. We're finding companies wanting to be less transactional and more customer service, customer obsessed approached.
Yeah, and actually that's really important, because if you think about customer obsession, you would imagine that an organization thinks about its end customers as the most important thing that they want to solve when they come to these briefings. But particularly with AI and all of this kind of fear around replacing people, you could argue that they're coming for inspiration on how to empower their own employees and how to do better. Ahmed, are you, when we talk about AI, and obviously you're well-versed in use cases like internal and external, do you think, executives have a 50-50 split on applying AI to empower internal productivity versus doing the latest and greatest to ensure, end customers get the best of what it is? Like, do you find it's a 50-50 split, or have we seen the last few months actually it's shifted one way or the other?
Yeah, I think it started initially because of the fear of the technology and they don't know what to do. Initially, it was like everyone thinking like, let me try it internally first. So they pretty much, I would say 2024, most of the requests and the discussion that people that starting especially in Q1 and the first 6 months of 2024, people was like, okay, let's first go to production with an internal workload. Let's increase the employee productivity, which is fantastic, by the way, right? It's increase the employee productivity, so it's make the business happy, definitely grow, and at the same time, make the employee themselves is doing the thing they love. But then the second half 2024 and this year 2025 as well, we see the direction of like, okay, let's now move to more of a customer facing. It's changing the way that we're interacting with our customer. Like the example that I gave with the train line, another example with Booking.com as well, where they have something called AI Trip Planner. That's changed the way that you are communicating with Booking.com to book a trip. Just describe what you want and they will do it for you. So I think the shift now start to move more towards as well, not only internally, externally, because they start to build the confidence of the technology and they feel that now they can take it to the external customer. So I think, yeah, getting more balance, but it started more internally, now shifting more of an external.
And is that, in a way, shifting to the external, do you think executives are being pushed because they see others are doing it? So we talked a lot about kind of like fear of missing out.
Yeah.
You know, we always have these fast followers, like you said, Booking.com and Trainline. You could argue that they are leading, they're blazing a trail, right? Yeah. So everyone else is trying to then fast follow. I mean, Keith, are you seeing, you know, when we've got customers that are, you know, booking their time with us, I mean, do you feel that sometimes they're doing it, you know, without a lot of preparation? They just want, look, I heard that Booking.com is doing this, so we need to follow. Like, how much is that kind of, you know, what's the advice that you would provide to, you know, people who are listening in, potentially executives who are trying to fast follow? Like, is that something that we could help out with? But actually, is an executive briefing center even the right type of forum if people want to fast follow?
Yeah, I think it's actually really the perfect type of forum, really, because we have our leaders and our experts constantly talking to all the different corporations around the world. So we're hearing what they're challenged with, what they're faced with. We're helping them build out these new solutions to really provide more value to their employees, to their customers and end users. And so frequently, a lot of the requests that come through, they do want to know, what did that digital bank do? How did they make that happen? How is that energy company, you know, providing better inputs to their customers? How are they saving money there? So I would say it's really the best place because again, it's that intimate space where you know you can have those genuine private conversations. You can be vulnerable. We can offer support on their particular issues, their problems, and we can customize, you know, our solutions for exactly what they need. But they do. I think the other aspect is, initially, AI was a little unknown, kind of a shiny object for a lot of people. And at this point, they've used it, they've seen it, they've seen the reports on it. They're seeing it in the industry, and it's really already earned that trust of, okay, now we do need to fast follow. We do need to get our business just as cutting edge and innovative as them. How are we going to do it? And that's where, again, they come to us and get the opportunity to hear firsthand how we helped another company and how we can help their company.
Yeah, actually, it's really interesting. I've been privy to a few of these, you know, executive briefings or one-on-one coaching sessions, and you know, when you come to an organization like Amazon Web Services, the key thing that we could always answer is the how. But it sounds like a lot of the time executives will come in and they will also find out not only the what they need to actually solve for, but also the why. Is actually asking the questions as to why they're solving for things. And you know, one of the things that I'd be really interested to find out is when you think about the why as an organization, you know, do you think organizations know why they need to adopt artificial intelligence? I mean, when you talk to an executive, we know a lot of executives are now joining organizations that are completely new, right? We know that the average tenure of chief technology officers has dropped a lot. You know, you've got technology officers that skip from one company to another. Do you think that the message is clear for these new executives in terms of why they need to adopt AI? Or do you think the CEO is simply telling the CTO, hey, we need AI because there's no why, it's just you need to do it. So you need to find out the what and the how to do it. I'd be interested to find out what the instruction of the why is for an executive. And actually, if you're a new chief technology officer, do you care about the why? Yeah.
Yeah, I think the why is very important. This is your starting point, like why you're doing that, like, and what's the exact business problem that you're trying to solve. And to be honest, like, you know, the customer, and when we discuss with them, they know their challenge. It's just when you bring them together, bring it more to light. And one of the things that really excite me, like, you know, those AI solutions can really solve like a real business problem and impact our life, especially as an example of life science. If you think, for example, as one of our customers, AstraZeneca, for example, they came to us with a problem about clinic trials and how it's become complex now to select the right patient because of you have a lot of structure and unstructure. And the why was very clear, right? We want to accelerate and be more accurate of selecting that. So we're not replacing human, we're actually empowering their employee. So the why and what they are trying to achieve was really clear for the executive at the time, where they build this clinical trial AI empowered solution. That's a group of some customers like really have a clear visibility about what they're trying to do, which we encourage people to do. But there's also the other aspect that people need to understand, and I think the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, mentioned before that AI will not replace human, maybe for now, I don't know, in the future, but what you need to care about, what's going to be replacing you, is another company that they use AI. That's 100% will replace you. And same for the employer as well. AI will not replace you, but someone who's using an AI within your organization or another company will replace you. And that's why it's very important that we give the two messages during this executive briefing, like, look, we look to the why, the business value, we take it from there. But at the same time, you need to hear what other customers doing, because literally we are like really in an industrial revolution, if we can say it, of the AI, right? So you need to move fast. Otherwise, you'll find someone else will replace you.
Yeah, and I think that's sometimes, not really clear with executives, is that they're very narrow-minded. In no disrespect, like executives that have been in a company for 20 odd years, they would have probably for the last 2 or 3 years been quite concerned around, I don't know what I don't know, right? And maybe the previous 17 years, it was autopilot. They knew almost everything about the company. So there's a bit of uncertainty there. And they think probably the why, the what, and the how is based on what they need to solve for the company. But as you just said, there'll be new companies coming out that is completely replacing that existing company. We know, that that has been in the news, with one prominent chief executive officer of a self-driving car company saying that they're replacing one of the world's largest software companies with an AI-based company. And I think that's really important, because when you think about what is it that you need to solve for, when you think about data and AI, you don't need to think about if I work as a bank, I need to only solve for banking problems, because actually there'll be somewhere else in another industry that is also solving for a similar problem. You think about hyper-personalization, like providing offers to someone on a mobile app. Does the customer care that offer is for a banking offer or for a retail offer? No, it's about the mechanism of providing something that's relevant. And one thing which is really important is that when you come to an executive briefing center, something that we can unlock is the way in which we can bring in other industries and what they're doing to solve for that. And I think that's something which I'd be keen to hear from you, Keith, is like, do you think executives that come to us, do they know that? Do they know that, we don't need to be narrow-minded? Just because I am a bank, I don't need to solve for things that are just banking problems. They look to us to find out about inspiration and what we're doing in healthcare life sciences, looking at other industries. Do you think that type of open-minded is clear with the modern-day executive?
I think it is in some regards and not with others. I feel like our current modern day executives are just so overwhelmed with the number of business challenges that they face today. It's not like it was, let's say, 40 years ago, where they were the expert of everything. Let's say the CFO in regards to their company. Now they are challenged to prioritize what is most important for them. So when they come in, sometimes I think they are a little bit more narrow focused about what they're going to hear from us, what they're going to see from us. But we have a myriad of different types of solutions at the EBC. For example, our innovation workshop, which really allows them to unpack a lot of what's going on. We can share those other ideas and those other solutions that are occurring in other verticals, which kind of then gives that aha moment, I think, for our visiting executives, which I think is a powerful thing, because they came into the door thinking, how are we going to solve for this one challenge that we have to do before our budget meeting? And then by the end of it, they get really excited, because now they've uncovered a whole different idea that they can run with. So it's a little bit of both. It is a challenge sometimes to get the executive to think outside of what is been on their to-do list for the last week. But with the environment that we have, it's an open discussion. And so sometimes those conversations really take us down an alley that we weren't expecting. But then gives them a good takeaway for the next 6-9 months of what they can kind of follow with.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about the actual practicalities now. We've talked a lot about EBCs, what we call executive briefing centers, and you as the site lead for London. Could you explain a little bit about the practical day-to-day of if you are an executive and you're invited into an EBC that is hosted at our offices, like how would that day look like if you wanted to explain for some of the viewers who are interested in that?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question too, because they're so busy with everybody having the phone in their pocket now. I mean, that's their computer, that's their messaging, that's their email. They have sometimes thousands of employees that are constantly having escalations. And so the Executive Briefing Center gives them that option too to take a step out of their normal workday. They come in, we have everything there for them that they need. If they do need to step out for an important call, let's say the CEO, we have rooms and options for them on that. But it really allows them to take that time that we all need really to disconnect a little bit and work with us to hopefully overcome the challenges that they've been faced with for months, if not years. And so I think sometimes they're surprised that the day goes by so fast. They come in there and they get a chance just to kind of tell us what is top of mind for them, and then we work with them on it. So I think by the end of it, I'm always delighted when I see everyone leave for the day, big smiles, kind of almost more relief on their face than they had when they walked in the door, because it is different from their normal 9-to-5 workday. So,
and can you describe is it always in a room? Do we allow them to get outside of the office? Do we have other ways in which we can take them on tours? What is it that we offer?
Yeah, we certainly do, and we like to try and make the day a little bit varied. So it's not just one presentation followed by discussion, which they usually have in their own office at home. But we often will, take them over to fulfillment centers to show them how our robotics, are in action, how our technologies on AWS are helping, the online retailer be able to even connect with more people, better understand those people, use AI to understand shopping habits and interests. We can work with our Just Walk Out team to understand how we're doing the digital in-store shopping experience. And then also, even just to take them out and look at other workshops that we can kind of bring in. So it isn't always about let's just talk and discuss, but maybe let's get more hands-on. Let's get the flip charts out, the Post-its out, and let's map out the next 3 months. What is it that you need our help with? And we mentioned earlier, I think it's important because it then is a little bit more interactive, a little bit more immersive, and not just a normal 8-hour boardroom meeting.
Yeah, and you've already touched on it around kind of when you want to be able to kind of engage with an executive stakeholder, sometimes the proof is in actually building it. But I imagine that that's not going to be quite the same if you have only 1 hour. So, in the interest of time, some of the final words that I could ask you to provide some recommendations on is if you had to elevate a pitch to an executive that is in front of you and they only have 2 or 3 minutes, what would be the key things that you could recommend to an executive that they need to think about in order to empower and drive, AI adoption or to drive success in their technology?
Yeah, I think embrace. So embracing the technology is the most important now, and being open-minded. And they need, I think all of us need to understand that whatever the way that we run our business now, it's going to be completely different in the next 2 or 3 years, right? So embracing the technology, try to find the starting point that gives you this excitement and flywheel within your organization that will drive the business impact. That's a good starting point. So embracing, then find the problem, start this flywheel. And I think the third thing is back to people. It's quite important. This is the big asset that they have on their organizations. They need to think about how they enable them, and also, this is what we see as well as a feedback, a lot of executive. When they start to embrace and use the AI and technology, they start to attract new talent to their organizations. If you think about the new people coming to the market, Gen Z, if we can call them, like my kids and others, they are really excited to work in an organization that work and embrace AI. They will not come to work with you on a mainframe solutions, or like, transforming an old code to a new code with a manual way, right? They want to come to work the most excited problem. So I would say, like, think in those three areas that I just mentioned. Embrace technology, start with a business problem, and then make your place as an attracted to people to come, and that will totally transform the way that you run your business. So that's going to be maybe three points quickly for the AI for executives. So let me flip the discussion a little bit. So what do you think? What's your advice? You've been also to so many executive briefing meetings that we have in our EPC. What's your advice to our executive as well?
Well, I kind of knew that this question was coming. Obviously, I'm wearing the hoodie, as you can see here, for Executive Briefing Center speaker. I think, look, the main thing I would probably say is that we always think that the decision maker is always the chief technology officer or the chief people officer or chief operating officer. I think the key advice of executives is to be humble and ensure that they can be very objective in their thinking. Even if you bring in, all your C-level together for an executive briefing center, some of them will be very like-minded in their approach. A lot of the time, you're just there to be told what to do. Like I said, it's very transactional. I think a lot of the time executives need to kind of reach down, even further down from their reporting lines, into another area of the business that they have no clue about, right? That sometimes, Amazon, scales really well when we have cross-functional representation of leaders who work side by side with the builders in a completely different area. Let's imagine Amazon Fresh and also Amazon Fashion, very different areas of the business. But even in this office that we are in at the Amazon headquarters in London, we have multidisciplinary teams of leaders that will work across all different areas. So I think a modern day executive needs to be humble. They need to be very humble around being objective, being open to, being picked on a little bit, which is fine. Because I think in this day and age with artificial intelligence, if you're not humble and you think that you know everything, then unfortunately you're destined to fail. And I think that's what we're seeing anecdotally is that leaders, in terms of their tenure, has been reducing, not because they want to move to the next company, but sometimes they feel that their working environment is not conducive to their domain experience, which is fine. So my suggestion to executives is, well, change the script as the way that you did. Change the way that you look at your domain knowledge. If you're a banking executive, don't think of yourself as a banking executive. Think of yourself as a customer specialist, right? And if you can pivot yourself to be more customer-centric as a domain, that would apply you to different areas. So that way, you're not moving because you feel that the environment is not conducive. You're moving because you've achieved your goals. You can now re-borrow your experience into other areas. I think that's something which I think is really important, is executives have a lot of great feedback that they can give to other people. But I think it's about spreading that feedback more widely. And if you are humble to stretch to the other areas, I think you should definitely do that.
Great advice, being humble.
Fantastic. And I guess the last question for you, Keith, is that, for those who don't have the ability to come to one of our offices, could you talk a little bit about, our EBCs? We obviously have one in London, but where else do we have executive briefing centers across the world? And how do, prospective people who want to come to those EBCs try and get involved in coming to one of those?
Yeah, we have our main headquarters in Seattle has a very large executive briefing center where you can get an opportunity to talk to a lot of our product leaders and industry leaders. But we also have the centers in New York, London, Tokyo, and Singapore. And Singapore are our newest added. The locations were quite strategic. We really want to make sure that we have our Amazon and AWS leaders in that area to be able to also take the time to meet with the executives. So it can be a bit of an investment from both a time and a cost to come and travel and get away from your normal headquarters or bring your team together. As we mentioned, the C-suites are often now disparate in many different locations in a company. But take that time. It's I think, very important to really stop the regular routine of your workday and get a chance to work with us to really focus on the problems. Because within one day, we can oftentimes, and I hear this from customers a lot, solve a problem that they've been experienced with for a year, and kind of doing the same thing over and over with the same result. But when you get a chance to actually get your team together at one of our centers, and we can really diagnose what the problem is, come up with other solutions that we've seen within your industry, and really get them excited and impress upon like what the art of the possible, what the future can look like for them. I think it really accelerates all of their work for the next 12 months as they continue to think bigger and become more innovative.
So thanks a lot for joining us today on this episode. One of the key things that clearly is on top of our mind is that executives ultimately are the decision owners, but providing them the forum to speak what they need to say, but ensuring that we provide them with some of their best practices, hopefully we can blend together an alignment of the mindset and help to change the way in which they operate the organization, change the culture. So for those who are joining at home, if you'd like to know a little bit more about the Executive Briefing Center at Amazon Web Services, just click on the link below. But I'd like to thank both of you for your time, and stay tuned for another episode that's coming in the next few weeks.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.